along with. So upon Handshake's launch in February 2020, we had reserved ICANN's top-level domains, such as like .com. We had reserved that for VeriSign, and .cloudflare for cloudflare.com. And if we weren't going to do a soft fork, then those would actually become available for auction. And we definitely want to avoid that because we want to leave it to those that have the rights to it. And we reserve not only these top-level domains, but we also reserve what was called the Alexa Top 100,000. So at the time when they did the snapshot, maybe in like in 2018, when they did the snapshot of the top 100,000 most visited sites at that time, and we reserved those names for the respectful owners, so they could actually, and I've done it myself quite a bit by getting different ICANN domains, but basically you just prove ownership, cryptographically, and then you get the top level domain on Handshake as a result, along with HNS Coin, which we'll get into the value props of that. But what the soft fork does is it basically, for not all of them, but for the Alexa top 10,000, we continue to have those reserved indefinitely, as well as the ICANN top level domains like .com, .org are going to continue to be reserved for the rightful owners. Yeah.
So what does it mean reserved? Like people cannot use it, or
they're unclaimable, they're unusable. Besides, if VeriSign claims .com on Handshake, then they own .com and they can use it, but no one else has access to it. You can't open an auction for it.
Wait, so what if you own a domain name that is like Alexa top like 11,000? Like
Alexa top 11,000.com. Right. So let's say that was part of that original list that was reserved. Basically, I would add a few records to Alexa top 11,000.com on Namecheap, for example. Maybe I'll use Cloudflare just because we use DNSSEC is how you have to kind of like prove that you own that domain and basically interact with Handshake's blockchain. It can't be done on Namebase, it has to be on self-custody wallet. Though ShakeStation actually has implemented this as well too. But basically afterwards I would win, or I wouldn't win, I would claim .alexa top 11,000 / so I'd own the top level domain version of it, but it wouldn't have .com in the domain. But the big news with the happening, I call it the happening because we have the happening, or having for Bitcoin, right? Having to do with the block rewards getting cut every 4 years. And Handshake had that happen earlier this year. But with the happening, basically close to 80,000 Handshake top level domains are going to become available for the first time. And it's not my belief, it's just a fact that this is going to be a huge gold rush for investors, entrepreneurs, dare I say speculators. I mean, it's just a reality. So how I just said earlier, how I registered .hey back in 2020, maybe I got in the early part of Handshake's young infant history. This is going to be a second iteration of that where all these names are going to become available at the same time once the soft fork happens. But why does it matter? Why do you care? What can you do with them? We've touched on it a little bit, but I think it's let's just kind of focus on the Handshake ecosystem today, right? We don't have a centralized company or foundation. No one's pushing this forward besides all of us in this room can, and others around the world. So right now, you can kind of see the growth that we've had since the launch. We're, I believe, maybe 3,000 domains away from 12 million Handshake top-level domains on Handshake's blockchain right now. Those are just top-level domains. And all of those were obtained either by, claiming your reserve name. That was only maybe 6,000 names. So then you think about close to 12 million other names were won by interacting with the blockchain, opening up an auction for available name, winning that auction, and it's called a decentralized victory auction. So it's not like anybody is behind on the other side that's going to be pocketing your money. It's literally you're interacting with the blockchain. It's beautiful, and I really recommend y'all trying it out. And as Marcus said, you can win a name for free, but you need at least one HNS just to really open up the auctions and everything. But and one thing that we'll get into in another slide about how the kind of bidding and auction mechanisms work. So what is a name worth? just to kind of highlight a few different areas. You can see, right, all this kind of like sidebar chart. That's from name basis marketplace, some of the top secondary sales. So this isn't winning the name initially. This is afterwards. After I own that name, I choose to sell it to somebody else. And so you can kind of see some of those. But what I'll highlight is the text for all of us. So Namecheap CEO, Richard Kirkendall, already touched on a few times. He had won .s in an auction, not a decentralized auction. It was an auction, like just that we did. The community did it online. A HandyCon, it's a global handshake event. He won .s, a top level domain on Handshake, last year for $750,000. It's the highest NFT domain sale ever, and you probably didn't hear about it because guess what? Handshake doesn't have a marketing department. They have me. That my voice only takes us so far. And you may have, I know a few domain sites covered this and everything, but basically it's the highest sale ever reported. And you have to ask yourself why. This isn't a speculator. This guy knows what he's doing. Namecheap, second largest domain registrar in the world, a private company compared to GoDaddy. So you're talking about $1 billion company, him choosing to use their capital to invest, in .s. They've invested, at least, eight figures, I would say, here in the past 2 years in the Handshake ecosystem. You have to ask yourself why. And I would recommend looking at, what he's talked about in the past and what their ethos is at Namecheap and why I do respect them about what's going on. But I believe it's about the future, the potential, the utility of what .s can mean. NamesCon is another highlight. I know that's where I met Marcus last year. It's actually around this time last year, wasn't it? Late August, early September. We had NamesCon, which is the world's largest domain conference. And Handshake ATX helped organize more of like the blockchain domain section, but we had an auction down on the first floor, and .e sold $300,000. So we're talking about in a bear market for whatever you want to call crypto, NFTs, everything's a bear market during this time last year, and it can argue still is today. Sold for $300,000. And the one thing I always want to point out is there was a traditional domain auction with professionals that have been in the domain space since the 90s, and they had an auction the day before where they had hundreds of .com and other premium domains for sale, and .e sold for more than all of them. It pissed a few people off, okay? I'll just share that. But I think that kind of shows what is possible, and the main bidders on that, because we're there, the top 3 bidders that bid more than $100,000 were all from the traditional domain industry. So Namecheap, Epic.com, which really cares about freedom, and then Porkbun, which is also like the same guys that own like .art and a few other top level domains in ICANN. So those are kind of like the top 3 bidders. Did you have a question?
I was just curious, like, if the bidders were paid like with Bitcoin, but I guess they were actually like big brands, so they didn't need to pay Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's Flamingo Handshake, and so they're kind of like, just part of the community. So since it's such a large amount and Handshake is so small, typically we like to try to denominate everything in HNS. That's how I think about like what domains are worth is like, HNS. Having said that, when you're talking about 6 figures, like $300,000 or $750,000, I believe like there's like a certain portion has to be paid in HNS, and then the rest can be paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum usually, or a stable coin. Is how those auctions work.
And who actually gets this money?
The ones that owned, there's somebody that won .s or .e, like here in 2020, maybe beginning of 2021 by interacting with the blockchain, right? So that was the decentralized auction, but then afterwards you own that name, and then they decided to put it up for sale in this, this regular auction that we have. Any other comments, Marcus?
No, they basically flipped it.
Yeah, it's a flip. It's a flip. So they held it for a year, and then they ended up profiting like 100,000%, or something along those lines. So here's a small snippet of what is coming to you and what you can have your eyes on. So these names I mean, can we call them version names? Like they have never been able to, open an auction for or bid on, so no one's ever owned them before. They've been locked up with the keys thrown to the side, and they're gonna become available by early February 2024. These are just some of the ones I highlighted. .king, I think that'd be a pretty badass username. .goat as well, greatest of all time. But just take a look at this list. .text, .ui, so like the techie ones, techie top level domains have done really well for second level domain registrations from what I've seen. And then also we have a lot of geo domains too, which is kind of like my interest. So you have like .mv for Nevada, .oregon, .michigan. So similar to what I'm doing with .tx, where we have a couple thousand domain registrations, even though we're still really early trying to establish .tx as a domain for Texas, y'all can do something similar. I will let you know that I do have my eyes on .texas, and it's not because I want to profit from it, but last year myself and a few other community members, we actually provided testimony at the Texas State Capitol in front of a blockchain committee a few times. And we did bring awareness that .texas has been reserved since 2020 for texas.gov, for the
.texit.
Yeah, .texit, you can take a look on that. I guarantee you that is already owned by somebody, but you should look into that. Maybe it's for sale. Maybe you can gift it to the right people. I'd be on board with that. But
Shit.
That's already
No.
taken. But I mean, who knows though? Who knows? You have to really look at this list. I have a spreadsheet of all these names that haven't been available before. I can share it with you all. It's public. It's a public spreadsheet for you all to be able to kind of comb through the list, because this is a small snippet. There's 80,000 domains. I would say most of them probably aren't worthwhile, but I would probably say there has to be, several thousand, like maybe 10 to 20,000 domains that are going to be a premium in the future, that you can build a lot of really cool stuff on, or put in the hands of somebody that will. But I do want to obtain .texas to be able to hold on to them until the state of Texas becomes a little bit more, I don't know, like, I guess they care about like tech. I mean, they can realize the, technology or freedom. It may take a few years, but we're associated with the Texas Blockchain Council, who's a pretty big player within the Texas State Legislature. So I believe as Handshake matures that there could be a use case, because there are a lot of really good use cases for .texas.
Do you have to pay for it to bid, or like how does it work? Or registration and recovery?
Oh, okay. This actually brings me to this point. The question: HNS coin. Why do we have a coin? Why do you need a coin? Let's get into like some of like what you have to do with the coin. If you recall at the beginning, Handshake is a proof of work blockchain. You have to be able, in order to have security, you have to be able to pay the miners with a coin. And in order, to have, what we're trying to do is have a decentralized root zone. We can't be building on top of another technology. We can't have any kind of centralized component. In order to obtain these top level domains, these HNS names, by interacting with the blockchain, you must have HNS coin. And as I already said, Namebase is one, ShakeStation is another, and then Bob Wallet is what I would recommend for the self-custody wallet. Go to bobwallet.io and just download your own wallet. So the utility of the HNS coin, it can be used to open new auctions, what I've talked about, so you kind of need it. I would recommend, having it before February, having some HNS coin to bid on the names. So you have to place bids. You're not bidding in dollars or anything like that. You're bidding like 10 HNS or 100 HNS or 1,000 HNS. And part of that bid, you can place a blind to obscure what your actual bid is. So you have your real bid, and then you have your blind, and then you have at the end of the auction, which takes place over 7 days. It's based on so many blocks. Then it's time for you to reveal your true bid, and then that's what you actually bid. Yes, Marcus?
It's been forever since I've actually had to go get some HNS coin. And some of the things that I hear quite often is that it's difficult to do so. I don't know if it's become more difficult since the last time where basically you were waiting for Namebase to have liquidity and checking back and forth to then send Bitcoin to it, etc. Has that process improved at all, or what are the avenues for people who are going to be watching this and saying, okay, now I want some coin?
Yeah,
Where do I go
that's a
get it?
great question, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it's been completely solved for yet. Unfortunately, in the past several years, for exchanges, you have to pay, for listings, or have to have VC investors that kind of contact the exchanges. And we don't really have, currently too much of that right now. So Handshake is listed on some exchanges, including Namebase. It kind of just depends with Namebase. It is a good place to get started, to where you can buy HNS with Bitcoin or USD, so you can connect your bank account, even if you're a US resident, and just buy the HNS there, and then you can always withdraw it to Bob Wallet or another self-custody wallet. But I would say it is still an ongoing issue that we're trying to work through as a community with obtaining it. Yeah.
There was gonna be a soft fork, right, of HNS, so.
Yeah, that's what this.
Okay.
Yep.
If I obtain HNS tonight, and after the fork, do I need to do anything else, or will it's the same?
It kind of depends on where you have it, but we've already, in this past month, we started signaling to like the miners and everything. So we've contacted, I believe, all the pools. So like Ant Pool, there's a few other pools, DX Pool, where basically they kind of take care of things on their own, and they make the changes in the pool, and that's communicated to the miners. As far as from your perspective, we'll probably, if you have it on Namebase, you don't have to do anything. You can just rest assured. If you have it on Bob Wallet, I'm sure you'll have to update your wallet during that time. But it's not going to be, this is a soft fork. It's not anything like too crazy. It's mainly focused on the names, what we've mentioned this evening. But a few other things is, to bid on the names, and then also to update the DNS records. It kind of involves like a small little transaction fee. It's literally like a fraction of a penny. But in order to add TXT records or any other kind of records, it does involve like a small fee that gets paid to the miners in order to make your DNS record updates on chain. Having said that, if you use like a name server or something else, like I use DNS Simple for a lot of my domains, they're kind of compatible with Handshake, and so that's kind of where I have my DNS records. Then it doesn't cost you anything. It's just if you want to like make any kind of DNS record changes done on chain, involves like a small fraction. And then one other component is you do have to renew your names every 2 years. I know that may sound frightening. Oh man, you have to renew your names every 2 years, but literally it's just a heartbeat transaction, just to kind of maybe show proof of life, like, hey, I'm still here, kind of a deal. It's literally as of now, what it's been over the past couple of years, it's like literally a fraction of the HNS, so it's like a penny max to renew your names. Sure, if you have thousands of names, that could add up to maybe a few dollars, but it's really really not that big of a deal. Perhaps in the future, if Handshake chain becomes even more active, I mean, you saw we have 12 million top level domains. It's not too bad of a start, but let's say we get even more traction on the blockchain, then there could be higher renewal fees in the future. But that gets paid to a miner, doesn't get paid to like a third party or another company. Yep. Yes, you first. Did you have a question? Oh, okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Can you renew ahead of time? Like .com, you can register like for 10 years, I think up to 10 years, right?
That's a great question. So you can't renew for 10 years, but you can always renew at any time. However, it only kind of kicks the ball 2 years forward. So it's only a max of 2 years, unless there's a change in the code in the future. That's how it's been. That's how it's as of now. So yeah. So if you have any kind of valuable names, like before you forget about it, if it's been like maybe it's a year out or 6 months out, it's probably better just to go ahead and just say like, hey, I'm here. It's just a click of a button, really, in Bob Wallet. For Namebase, Namebase automatically renews the names for you, so you don't even have to think about it. So they try to make it as easy as possible for beginners, compared to if you own your
But
names.
then it means that like your data is kind of like going to be like moving backwards, right? Like it expires like say like March this year, right? But then you renew it like next February, and then it expires February the following year.
2 years.
Right?
It's always 2 years out.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So
it
from
is
the
gonna
date
be
that
moving kind of like backwards, right?
How is it backwards?
Because you're going to be renewing it, presumably like at least like a month or like a week before it expires.
Yeah.
So like the expiration date will be kind of like moving kind of.
Oh,
backwards,
gotcha.
right?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so it does kind of like fall back depending on when you decide to renew it. That is true. That's a good point compared to what traditional domains, that date stays the same, right?
How does name change? How do they? How far ahead do they usually renew? Like do you have
Namebase?
studies? Yeah.
I mean, it kind of depends, really. I'm not part of their team, but I mean, usually it's just nothing that you really experience on the front end. But there have been instances, I mean, they are a company, there are issues at hand, so it's just that if you do have valuable names, I would say at some point it would probably be best to, bring them to Baba, because I have seen examples, it may have been last year, where they, Namebase, is having issues or like change of ownership, and they have a lot of things working out, and I believe they actually let some names expire, which is like a huge no-no, so that way, the, the owners had to reclaim their name, or when it ended up going back up for auctions, I believe, that did happen last year. So that's why I say, like, not your keys, not your coins, not your names with that. But Namebase has, I would give them credit, they've gotten their shit together, here over this past year, so they're.
Do you
more
normally
responsible.
use like 2 weeks before, like 1 month before expiration, or like do you know what is their normal procedure?
I have no idea. I could probably look at some of the names I've held on Namebase and see, but I can't tell you exactly how far in advance.
Namebase does have a Discord channel, so you could always
They have a
ask in
Discord
there.
chat, so you can have a little bit of accountability. I know, they're, most of their team too, so they're, I mean, we are a pretty, small but vibrant community, and, there's accountability. It's not like they're gonna disappear. I mean, Namecheap, owns the majority of Namebase now, so, I mean, there is, I would say, responsible, players involved with, Namebase. Yeah, just a few other things with HNS Coin, just to kind of sum it up. So I mentioned that it has like 5 or 6 different use cases for it. And what Andrew Lee, he was a co-creator of Handshake, he's the one that founded Purse. He came up with this concept called adoption and progress technology. Compared to, and basically he applied that to Handshake and Bitcoin, to where basically the foundation of the technology is there. I mean, Handshake is, most amazing, beautiful piece of technology. But the thing is, you need to have adoption of it. You need more users of it compared to something like Ethereum. I believe that was more kind of like, building in progress, or like, it's still kind of like a work in progress where you still need to be building things. It's not, completely 100%, where it's supposed to be. And I think Vitalik, would definitely attest for that over the years, with like how, we constantly have to be making changes with the foundational piece of technology. So I thought that was kind of interesting to have 2 different types of camps. But the last thing I'll make a note with the auctions is, and why it relates to the coin is, when we're doing these decentralized auctions, so let's say, like Marcus is bidding on, what name, does any name catch your eye on that list earlier?
Dot Boss is a good name.
Which one?
Dot Boss.
Dot Boss? Yeah, let's say Dot Boss.
So let's say we're all bidding on this in the room, okay? And let's say Marcus is the top bidder. How much you thinking it's worth?
What Dot Boss would probably go for?
Yeah. You just throw.
I mean, at least 100,000 HNS.
Yeah, let's say 100,000 HNS, and then you have Nole, maybe I'm more conservative. But I mean, we all realize Dot Boss. Goodness. But I bid, 80,000 HNS. I'm the second highest bidder. So the auction goes for 7 days, and then there's another 7 days where you have to reveal your bid, to kind of show everybody, hey, this is what I bid. Maybe I was faking you out and like putting this huge fake bid, and so everybody thought I bid 500,000 HNS, but it turned out to be 80,000 HNS. So after the end of that reveal period, then Marcus gets Dot Boss. He gets it in his own wallet. Okay, it's yours. You minted it, I guess you could say, and you can use it however you want to. You can list those domains on Namecheap, HNS.id. There's a lot of different avenues that you can go, or you can just use Dot Boss as your, username itself. You don't necessarily need any second level domains, although I think we would want some. But basically, Marcus would be paying the second highest bidder price, so he wouldn't pay 100,000 HNS. He would pay 80,000 HNS. So that's a pretty good deal then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the recommendation is to bid what you think a name is worth. Obviously, there's going to be a few different strategies for this time around. I think that we should all kind of discuss this through, what the best way to go about it is when you have 80,000 names become available, because this hasn't happened before. That he pays 80,000 HNS, but once again, that doesn't go to me, the second highest bidder. That doesn't go to the Handshake company or foundation, because there is none. that is burned from the coin supply. Burned. So it basically over the years, where you have with, sometimes people say Bitcoin is, deflationary over the long run, with you losing your coins and yada yada, the block rewards and everything else. Well, that's literally baked into the Handshake protocol of like when you're bidding on these auctions, the second highest bid goes and just is burned from the supply. It's not accessible. So over time, HNS coin becomes scarcer and becomes worth more valuable. I would say that's kind of like the theory of it anyways.
Now, on the bidding process, just to clarify, the reason why there's a reveal period is because people can mask their real bid with fake bids, correct?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the strategy. Some individuals just have a real bid. Marcus is pretty confident he's just gonna bid 100,000, that's his real bid, compared to somebody like me, maybe I'm being a little sneaky, and my real bid is 80,000, but only I know. And what you can do is place a blind, is what it's called. And so I'll do a blind of 420,000 HNS just to kind of show my strength, and maybe to impede from anybody else. Like if you see like, oh man, he bid 500,000 HNS, there's no way I can win. And so then some people can back away, but there's a lot of different strategies that you can go about it. I would say, probably with the soft fork, with the happening, I would say you're probably going to want to keep, because the issue is whatever bid that you place, it has to kind of stay locked for that duration of that auction until you reveal. So for at least 7 days, even that blind fake bid is locked up with that domain. You can't be using that HNS coin for any other domains. But then once you reveal your bid after a 7-day period, during that reveal period, then you can use that blind elsewhere, but then your real bid is still locked up. So technically, if you bid at the very beginning of an auction, that coin, whatever your real bid is locked up for 14 days, which is going to take you out of the play for some of these premium names. So it's just my belief.
But you have to have ownership of the stuff that you did. That's basically HNS you did.
HNS coin, yes, you have to own it. I mean, it's in. I guess you can hold it in main base, which they just have it kind of pulled in a few wallets. So whatnot, but it's you can see it through your account. So you can do that, but yeah, you have to purchase HNS previously or deposit it into your wallet in advance. And that's why I'd say, leading up to this event, it's pretty common sense, that there will be a lot more buzz by then. Some people will probably want to keep things silent, but I believe that there will naturally be a buzz leading up to the event. So that's why, we're HNS coin right now, we're in a bear market, it's dirt cheap. I think it would be better just to kind of silently accumulate over the coming months. So that way, there could be a huge pop-off, and then it's going to be a lot harder to participate in these auctions. Because what we've learned over the past few years, you have two assets. You have your NFT domains, your Handshake top-level domains, and you have your HNS coin. One thing we've learned over the past few years, HNS coin has pretty much stayed stagnant, and it hasn't really done too much just yet. Whereas with the domains aspect, that has gone up through the roof. And I think a lot of these domains, since they're all going to become available at once, they're going to, you're going to be able to get some really, really great deals that you wouldn't have been able to get over the past few years. So, in closing, just to wrap up our conversation, it's still early to get in Handshake. This is a second chance, to really get in early. Similar to if you've got in 2020 when all the names are kind of opening up on a weekly basis, all the possibilities of a word, name, numbers, emojis were opening up that year. Well, this is a second, rebirth of Handshake, I would say. So a lot of these, 80,000, a lot of them premium names. This is the time. The time is now to really get in. And it's my belief there's nothing quite like Handshake in the technological aspects. I believe, it's my belief, with these kind of projects, Bitcoin, Handshake, it's not like, it's a startup that's behind it, where you have VC funded, where you can run out of money, and then it's just gonna die. Handshake lives by its community, and I'm not gonna stop. When I first got in 2020, I looked at this as a 10-year project. That is my vision for ATX. It's not like, what's gonna happen this year, what's gonna happen over the next 10 years. And so we must have, just with anything, I would say like any kind of worthy investment or worthy of your time, we have to have a low time preference and have a long outlook. This isn't a high time preference project. does lock, unlock the door for, true expression and creativity. And, I would just leave y'all, if enough, similar to Bitcoin, if enough people believe that Handshake will become the base of the decentralized web, then it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'll also say there's not, Handshake is the only decentralized root zone at the end of the day, so there's no one that is doing or can do what Handshake does. So I'll end it there.